Welcome to the woods. Let's have a ramble. Let's have a chat. And what I want to talk about today is going to touch on a few different subjects which have been cropping up regularly from different channels online and in the mainstream media. So I'm going to talk a little bit about transhumanism, about something called the resource-based economy, about someone called Jack Fresco, and the World Economic Forum. Now, all of these subjects are separate, but hopefully I'll tie them all together. And what prompted this was two things. The first was a chat I was having with someone who contacted me online, who's been living off-grid for 10 years. And in his locality, there's a group of people who all live off-grid. Now, some of them have gone into farming and permaculture, growing crops. Some have gone into rearing animals. Others have got woodland and have got sawmills. And between them all, from what he was saying, they've got a lot of bases covered. And they're trading between each other. So he might cut some timber and planks and trade that for grain or vegetables, and trade some of that for animals and meat. And they're all working together to replace money on a barter system or a swapping system. And they can't replace everything at the moment, but they are covering their basics, and they're also bartering with time and skills and expertise. And the other thing that's prompted this was Morgoth's last video about the film Arrivals, and his analysis of that film. He comes to the conclusion that really it's about how petty and tribalistic humans are, and this is the reason they don't move forward. Their lack of communication, and their nationalistic, self-centered ideologies mean that we can't move forward, and therefore we should be overseen by a superior intellect. Now, in that film, it was the aliens. And that ties into something that Jack Fresco was saying early 70s, which was, we're not civilized, we are tribalistic. In a civilized society, you wouldn't need things like laws and the police, because people would be civilized. And these laws and structures and treaties between countries were there to change human behaviour, but broke down quite often because people revert back to doing what's best for them. And he came up with an ideology way back when, way before Klaus Schwab, called the resource-based economy, which was getting away from the financial structure we live under at the moment and basing cities where the people would live, which would be built by computers and technology, where you'd own nothing, yet everything would be provided for you, and the world's resources would be shared fairly by artificial intelligence, by technology, by a supercomputer that would decide what was best and where things should go. Now, when he was first espousing this, it was pretty much science fiction. But if you look at where we are today, it's not a million miles away from what's being proposed with the Great Reset and what's possible with technology. So his idea that cities would be prefabricated, 3D printed and put together in such a way that the centre of the city would be a hub where things would be allocated out from there to individuals and everyone would live in that city, is very similar to the smart cities being proposed today. And his idea that we're too stupid and tribalistic to oversee that ourselves, and the allocation of goods and resources would have to be overseen by a superior intelligence. This time not aliens, this time artificial intelligence, the computer. And I'm fairly sure that's the road that the World Economic Forum is going to take. It's going to cut off not only our access to anywhere except those smart cities, but the ability for us to decide what or where we do anything. That will be decided for us by an intelligence greater than ours. And I've talked before on quite a few of my videos saying that I'm not against technology. I actually think, one, we can't stop it. Two, we shouldn't have to. But that it's the people in control of that technology and the manner in which they wish to use it that's the problem. And I say that because 16 years ago, when I first read up on Jack Fresco, I found out about him because I was doing research for a book I was writing. And the book was really the possibility of getting rid of money and finding an alternative way of society managing. And it was interesting. It was an interesting subject. And I've got to say, I came to a lot of the same conclusions that the elites have come to themselves, which is, once you can tie technology together, which they can now with 5G and the internet, most employment can be replaced with technology, which leaves everyone in a precarious situation. if you stick with a financial system we've got, which is why I think it will come to an end. And I think it should come to an end. And I think the end of it would be a good thing. There's a lot of control with that financial system. There's a lot of control by groups of people within that financial system. And if it wasn't there, that control would be gone. The problem is the people running the systems in place today are looking to take control of the ones that are going to replace it. So instead of having a situation where technology could take away the drudgery of work and leave people with much more free time, technology is going to be used to simply control the population instead of using employment, which I've touched on and talked about before. It's fairly obvious if you look into it that technology's been held back and employment kept artificially high in order to keep people in a perpetual state of survival. Too busy to look up, too busy to see the bigger picture, too busy surviving. But none of it needs to actually be that way. We are intelligent enough. And I think the problem comes is when you try to do things globally. When you try to have a one glove fits all, one size fits all, one rule for all. Which would only work if you were naive to believe that everyone is the same. And we're not. People are different. Cultures are different. We live differently. We want different things. If you were to do this nationally, if you were to use technology, the cat's here to say hello. If you were to use technology to advance what the population within that nation could achieve, if you could eradicate employment, would that mean that the people would become fat and lazy? Well, I don't believe so. I don't think people are intrinsically lazy. And yeah, I know there are some. But on the whole, I think people are industrious. People like to achieve. People like to create. And I think something called hobbies goes a long way to prove that point. That even today, when people are so busy and working so hard, that when they have free time, they'll actually go out of their way to do something that they enjoy. They'll spend time, effort, money being productive. And when I say productive, I don't necessarily mean they're creating something great, but it's something that takes effort. And that could be fishing, it could be tennis, it could be painting, whatever. Hobbies are simply a mechanism for people to be productive. And the fact that they exist points to the reality that we're not lazy. So if employment wasn't necessary, would money be necessary? If by using technology we could provide everyone with what they needed, would we need money? Well, I don't think we'd need money as we have it today. And I don't think all employment would disappear. So I think you would end up with a two-tier society. I think you would end up with the standard level, where everyone has what they need, and you'd have the people that were still working, the people that were doing jobs that technology couldn't replace. And I think you'll find that most of those jobs would be vocational. That would be nursing, care work, teaching, science. Now, as much as technology can assist in all those areas, I think we'll agree that it's the human touch that makes all the difference. And these people, the ones that went into those professions, would be the top tier of society and would be rewarded thus. So instead of the people being at the top of society, those who had accumulated more wealth, the ones at the top would be the ones that gave the most back to society. And maybe mechanisms would have to be in place to ensure that you could move between the two. But I think it would be an interesting study to see what would happen if you removed money from the equation. And obviously, those who control money would be fairly unhappy with that. But you see, in reality, if you woke up tomorrow and no one had any money, what's actually changed? The trees still grow. The crops still grow. Your ability to work hasn't ended. Nothing's really changed. And I've said this before, but it stands to reason that the reason you work isn't for money. The reason you work is because you want goods and services. Anyway, I'll leave that there. But I thought it was interesting that there were people out there trying to form societies without money, and that the World Economic Forum seems to be basing its ideas on Jack Fresco's resource-based economy from the early 70s. And that ties in with the transhumanism from Morgoth's last video, where what they were saying was humans aren't capable of working together, and that a higher intelligence needs to be in control. Personally, I'm not too enamoured with the idea of my life being controlled by some supercomputer in the basement of Klaus Schwab's mansion. Anyway, I'm going to go and feed the chickens, see if I can swap some of them for some timber. I'll speak to you later, people.